We're on air.
And 5, 4, 3,
Silent.
2.
The last two are silent.
2.
3, 5, 4.
You said the last 2.
Sorry, it's 3.
Is it 3?
Yeah. 5, 4.
Hey you guys, welcome back to Coupled Up with
Dex
and Chelsea. So we decided that we were gonna do something different, I guess. I don't know. In our culture, it's not really the thing that people do all the time. But we decided that we were gonna go to counseling, specifically premarital counseling with an actual licensed therapist or whatever you would call her. We've gone to one before at church, but that was, Christian-based premarital counseling. But we wanted to dive a little bit deeper into things. So we went ahead and purchased or bought the 10-session premarital counseling at this one place here in Houston. And we've had 3 sessions so far. They've gone pretty well, I would say. Pretty well. So we're just going to talk about a little bit of that. And then, yeah. So we're going to talk about the first 3 sessions. We're going to split this up, but we're going to talk about the first 3 sessions first today.
Yep.
Cool.
So, in those sessions that we've had so far, what we've gone through is what our relationship has been to this point, how we came to know each other, how we came to move from talking to dating and then dating to actually talking about marriage. And we also have we also dove into like what is our perception on marriage based on what our family taught us and also what we've just gleaned from our friends and their relationships. And then we really moved into this last session in talking about like our understanding of love and the concept of love to us and what love and passion and commitment look like in a relationship. So what we'll do is, so in that there were a whole bunch of questions. We get this pre-worksheet that we fill out individually from each other, and then we come together in the counseling session and talk about our responses to that. And so the first session where we talked about how we met and our story. Y'all know I love to talk about our story because it's the most magical thing ever. Dope. But so like here I have a whole like paragraph on mine in her paper.
You probably can't even see it.
Right?
Like,
but it's like nothing. Church.
That's what I said. Yeah, so he had these long paragraphs and everything because I think he thought that she was going to take them up right then and there.
Which she is going to take them up.
Okay, but yeah, she is, but she's going to take it at the end, and also she's not doing anything with it. It's just for their record. So, but you thought that it was going to be like this real, like, true homework type situation. And I was like, this is...
do it, turn into the teacher.
Right, but this, in my head, which I was, I guess, partially right. In my head, it's like, okay, even if she does take him up, whatever. But it's just talking points so we know what to say when we come into the session. Yeah. So, yeah, church.
Yeah, and so, like, especially in the first and second session, a lot of these things that we were being asked, we've already talked about because of our other reading and other things we picked up on, and especially even the things we've gotten from church, our realistic expectations for marriage. But there were a few things that having someone there to ask us a question and like it's this weird thing she does where when I'm answering a question, she's looking at Chelsea to see what her responses and reactions are, and she'll pick up on like one all the nonverbal cues, and she'll pick up on one thing and be like, so Chelsea, like, how did you feel about, what's your reaction to that? And when I guess Chelsea isn't responding, she really just kind of moves on. Yeah. And so that's been helpful, but it forces us to kind of talk about those things that might be a little bit more uncomfortable that we didn't necessarily talk about together.
Or even some things that you didn't even realize that were either an issue or positive, negative, whatever it is, you didn't even realize that it was a thing. And I mean, I guess that's what she gets paid the big bucks for.
That's right.
But the other thing I was going to say with her specifically, I don't know who the therapist is that she kind of has followed along with, but the way that she does these sessions is she talks about the origin of family a lot.
Family of origin, yeah.
Yeah, family of origin. So it's, you act this way most likely because of something from your past, your parents, your siblings, whatever it is, your upbringing most likely your thought process is formed from those people in your lives. So there's something that got brought up in the second session that we were like, oh dang, that's you didn't even think about it that way, but yeah. Okay, anyways, let's continue.
Yeah, and so some of those aha moments for us. So in session 1, where we really were talking about our history and the family, we kind of talked about how we got to know each other. And so she asked us the question about, like, what were some of the things that first attracted you to each other. And then we got down to, so what are some of the early challenges you've had in your relationship, and why do you have conflict? Why do you fight? And really what we realized is that some of those things that attracted us to each other. So for me, with Chelsea, those things were, I like that she's independent. She has her own opinion and she expresses those opinions. But some of the things that kind of aggravate me about her is that she expressed these opinions and she'll fire back in a way that, like, a real kind of strong-headed, aggressive way. But at the end of that session, she kind of brought it back and she said, don't you find it interesting that those things that you fight over are the things that draw you towards each other? And so that was interesting. And it was the same for Chelsea too. Those things that, she likes about a brother, but also she can't stand about me.
Well, one of them was his empathy towards others. Like, I liked that. I mean, I was attracted to that at first and everything, and still am. But then on the same thing, at the same time, sometimes I'm like, let's worry about yourself sometimes. Like, he'll just go off and start doing all these things, say yes to everything, and then get stressed out and annoyed that he said yes to all these things, and then, like, he can't either fulfill them, or, like,
I'm too tired.
You're too tired, or you might have said yes to 2 things and not realize that they were going on at the same time. You're like, I can't do both, so now, oh, dang it, like, I can't do it, da-da-da. So,
which is why I live my life by calendar.
But sometimes that calendar...
Which is another thing we talked about.
Yeah, that was another
shifting, like, our expectations and how we run our lives to meet each other's needs. But yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, what else from that session? Was there anything else?
Yeah, but the kind of thing that... So we had talked about these things about ourselves, but then when we got to the end, she was like, so overall, how did your family feel about the two of you as a couple? And it was like, oh, they were accepting, great, excited, whatever. And then it was like, how did your friends feel about the two of y'all? She was like, oh, they were excited because, Dexter's so great and he's like the best thing since sliced bread. But then I was like, yeah, for the most part, my friends were. And then I brought up how, like, 2 of my very close friends were a little hesitant about Chelsea. And Chelsea gave me this look, and I was like, what? This isn't news to you? And then she was like, yeah, you never talked to me about that. And I thought I had. And so the session brought that out. And really, I'm not going to go into that, but whatever. Yeah. So that was a thing. And so that was something we had to talk about after the session. And we, after each session, have had like that moment afterwards, like at the end, where it's like, really, dude, you're bringing that up? And usually it's always me.
Yeah.
And then we have to go back in the parking lot and sit in the car and have this discussion about what that is. But that's kind of the point in it. Whereas, with those kind of premarital courses where you're in there with a bunch of other people, you don't have that sort of intimate dialogue that really dives into what those issues were. So that was great. Then we moved into session 2 where we were talking about our expectations for marriage. And this session was interesting because we've already talked to and we've shared with you all kind of what our parents' relationships were and how they've informed how we relate to each other. But one of the things that came up in there was the fact that, like, her parents didn't really argue in front of her and her siblings. My parents definitely did argue, fight in front of me. I saw it all for what it was. And also, too, because my parents are so young, I saw them really learning how to live together and come together and develop a relationship together. And so my thing is, when we raise our kids, I want them to see us have disagreement open and, in front of us so that they can see how a loving couple resolves conflict. And Chelsea...
I mean, I'm fine with us resolving disagreements in front of them, but I don't want to argue in front of them sometimes the way that we argue. Like, I don't want to hear them either screaming at each other or yelling at each other or anything like that.
You make it seem like we're throwing chairs and throwing blows at each other.
And no, but there's been a couple times in our relationship where we've both raised our voices, and I don't want them to see that. Definitely going through disagreements, but there was something that you said in the car, and you're like, wait, let's talk about that on camera. About, you were like, oh, because you want your kids to be able to see what realistic expectations of what a marriage and a relationship actually is. And so what I was telling him in the car, what I started to tell him in the car was, even though my parents didn't do like the amount of fighting or disagreements and yelling and whatever else that his parents might have done in front of him, I still believe that I grew up and realized and had a realistic expectation of what marriage and relationships are. My parents definitely fought, but I think the difference is that, like, I saw the beginnings of it and I never saw it all the way through, because I guess they thought that that's not something that needs to be talked in front of each other. Just like how we talked about the finances and stuff, like maybe your parents didn't talk about in-depth finances with you. My parents talked about finances on a broader scale. They never talked to me about their financial struggles. So maybe I didn't see, the times, because I know it happened, I'm sure, but I didn't see their financial struggles that they had to go through and endure. But I knew, okay, when you go through financial struggles, this is what you need to do, or this is how you need to overcome them, and this is what you want to make sure you don't do when it comes to finances. So I guess it's the same thing with arguments with them. I didn't see them go all the way through, but there was conversations, and like I realized, what was what with disagreements.
I guess, but I want my kids to know that
they can know it.
And the interesting
but
thing
I don't
is,
want them to see it all the way through.
The interesting thing about that is I'm the one who gets all butthurt when we have a disagreement. And it's like, oh, we're fighting. It's the worst thing in the world. My heart hurts.
Yeah.
I just feel awful because we shouldn't be fighting and we shouldn't be arguing like this and blah, blah, blah. And Chelsea's like, it's normal. Couples do that. Like, it's going to be okay. It's not the end of the world. It's not like we are in this horrible situation because we are disagreeing and it's aggressive or whatever. And so that is interesting. So that's weird that you're now saying it. Yeah. But maybe it's because I've seen it and I know how I felt in those situations when I saw my parents arguing with each other, and it was like the end of the world, and this was this tense environment. Whereas for Chelsea, it's just like, it happens. We're going to get through it. Move on. But it's interesting. You haven't seen
I think that once we actually do have kids and everything happens, we'll find our little way of maneuvering and figuring out, okay, at what level are we going to stop and not have this conversation anymore? Yeah. Especially as they grow up and they start realizing what the conversations are about. Yeah. But anyways, okay.
And so we also talked about, so the thing is, again, we answer these separately, and then we come together and have a discussion. But we talked about what role a wife plays in leading a family and what role the husband has in leading a family. And so really, we were aligned there in our viewpoint of what the role of the wife is in the family and the husband. But what our therapist brought up is that we both share this traditional yet egalitarian outlook on what a marriage should be.
Big word.
So basically, but egalitarian in the fact that it's not just set in stone and this is your role, this is my role, stay in your lane. I'm the decision maker, you follow me, but we play a role and we balance each other out, and we don't have to stay in these singular roles, but we play dual roles. But so yeah, anything to add there? I think that was interesting. No. She put kind of verbiage to what we have. But also, like, the thing that we hadn't talked about that became a thing were holidays. I didn't know that this was a thing in her mind. When we think about the most challenging thing that might come up for us in our marriage, she brought up that because I have younger siblings and now my family has moved back to the United States, how we spend our holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, most of my family lives in Louisiana. Yeah. And her family, for the most part, they're all here in Houston. And so she's worried that it's going to become an argument when my family has expectations that I'm going to go to Louisiana with them and spend Thanksgiving or Christmas. And for her, it's like, she's going to want to spend that time with her family and for us to do that. And so that sparked conversation because I have no expectation, and I don't believe my family has an expectation that every single holiday I'm going to be traveling to Louisiana. because they don't even have that expectation that they're going to be traveling in Louisiana for every holiday. But it is this conversation about where are we going to spend the holidays, and how do we communicate that with our families?
Because that came up in other books or readings that we've, like, very briefly. But at the same time, our expectation was that...
That was in one of Chapman's books.
But the thing is that the expectation at that point in time was that his parents would not be in the United States.
Out of the country, that's right.
Right, so the conversation would be a little bit different, because then does that mean that you and I both are going to meet them somewhere for Christmas and New Year's or whatever, or does that mean that, like...
Still pissed off that that you couldn't come to London this year.
Yeah, but that's fine. Or does that mean that, you know, we stay here for this year and go there the next year or whatever? So things that'll all come up. Okay, let's go on to the next. The
third session that we had was about the concept of love, and so this was an interesting session. I don't know, for some reason for me it was particularly challenging, because in that session we dove into passion, commitment, and intimacy. And so you want to talk about that?
No, what were you going to say? Because
so, I mean...
it wasn't that, like...
deep for you?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah, so for me, when I've had this concept... So passion was the biggest thing for me in this session, because my concept of what...
Yeah, I remember.
You remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my concept... what was it?
I mean, no, his concept of passion means physical sex.
No, it wasn't just sex.
Okay, but physical passion.
Yeah.
Like, the desire and physical need to be around or be with or whatever. Whereas my definition of passion, we had the same definition, but yours was just more so physical, whereas mine is more so emotional.
Yeah.
And, like, maybe present. You know what I mean? So, like, I was saying the passion... how we exhibit passion in our relationship is just by, you know, being around each other and wanting and having that desire to be around each other, and the desire of choosing him rather than, you know, being at home or being out with my friends all the time. So whereas you were kind of stuck and you're saying...
It's like a strong excitement for and desire to, like, have or what have you. But, like, we were aligned in our the core of our definition, but, like, I'm having this hard time deciphering between, like, because what I hear her say is intimacy and commitment, because it's you want to be with them versus other people, and so because my understanding of and my viewpoint on passion is just this, like, oh, I want you right now. I, like, want you.
What does that
want
mean?
No one but you. And, like, to me, in my head and in my heart, it's not just sex, right? It's not just like I want to lay it down right now.
Okay, so
it's like, but man, I want to, like, love all on you. I just want to be
physical.
all.
That's physical.
It is a physical thing. I get that, and so that's where, you know, I struggle. But she did a very good job of redefining what passion really is.
But the analogy that she used was just how, because we were talking about physical and how you had a hard time thinking that passion was more so than just the physical aspect of it. She said, well, it's just like in your job. You're passionate about your job. You're passionate about the work that you're doing in your job. So just as much as that's not a physical element of your like something that you're passionate about, it's the same thing. You are passionate about me and wanting to, you know, have the best for me and, like, whatever it is, and seeing me succeed. Well, she didn't even say all this, but I'm assuming, you know, like, seeing me succeed and, like, whatever, and seeing us succeed together and all this stuff. So it's the same thing. And so she did a good job with understanding or making you understand that it's not just, not just, but, you know, it can be other things than physical.
Yeah. Because that is my biggest fear in marriage, and where Chelsea's had to constantly coach me, is that I'm just worried that we're going to get married and that excitement, that zeal, that, like, for each other is not going to be as prevalent in there.
So then I said, it's just like at the beginning of our relationship right now. Like, we're going to go through ebbs and flows. We were super excited. Everything was great, hunky-dory. We were in the honeymoon stage of when we first got together, and then we start arguing. We start fighting about things. Things come out, whatever. Okay, then you're going to propose, and then we're going to be excited, and then it's going to go down. The excitement's going to go down because we're going to start planning a wedding and getting stressed out about that. Then we're going to get married and everything's going to be
Stressing, yeah.
great and fabulous and stuff. And then we start having to deal with real world problems of living together and figuring all that out. So, like, it's going to go up and down. Then we're going to be excited when we start having kids. And then they're going to get on our nerves and it's going to go down. Like, you know what I mean?
I guess my thing
and everyone goes through it once again.
I guess my thing is because I think about this, like, storybook idea of a relationship and a marriage. And
Well,
it's
that's
like,
not
we are
realistic.
all, it's like, I get that in my head. Like, I get that, but in my heart, I'm having trouble reconciling that because it's like, it should be this exciting thing where, like, yeah, we have problems, but we can laugh it out in the end. And we just, like, it's just all this, we just want
Do we
each
do that all the
other
time right
total.
now, though?
No.
Okay,
And that's what,
so that's
yeah,
the
and
exact same thing
but
that's
that-
going to
but
happen.
But that's the biggest point of discomfort for me is that it's not that, you know? And so, yeah. What? What?
It's just, that's not realistic.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah. So, but like the interesting thing that came out about that session was in order to keep the passion alive, we have to have our own things. We have to do our own things.
Yep.
We can't always be doing things together and, you know, get rid of the things. Because what she was talking about was that those are the things that drew us to each other, is that we were our own independent person. So the last thing was on how we express love and how we show our partner love. I tell Chelsea 4 or 5 times in a minute, man, you're so beautiful. Oh, I love you so much. Ooh, your smell. Your scent, like every and oh, whew. Especially when like she has on like this dress, the way it like hits her butt. It's like
Dexter,
so
stop.
cute.
We're not, no.
But
no.
like I tell her that, oh, this
Stop.
is staying in. I tell her that, and it makes her so uncomfortable because it's overkill in her mind.
Yes.
Versus if I like say it. But to me,
Just
I like
say it
want
once
you,
and leave it alone.
but I want to drive
No.
it home, but
No.
like I guess it's
No.
more for me than for you then at that
Yeah.
point.
It
But yeah,
is.
it makes her uncomfortable. And that's
It
a big
is.
area for growth. And even after this counseling session, the day after, I had to keep catching myself. Oop, I'm sorry. I know I said it 3 times, but like I need
But
to
like,
stop.
that makes me annoyed. Oh, I said it 3 times. Let me stop. I'm not sitting here counting how many times you're saying something to me, but the touching and the over and over and over again. And I know some girls are probably like, "You're lucky that he's doing that," and da 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 da. I'm not saying that I don't appreciate it and that I want it to stop completely. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying for me personally, I get a little uncomfortable and it's like, okay, thank you. Like I don't know how to react to that. And that's just something that like I have a hard time with.
And in my heart of hearts, I understand it because that used to be me. I was like, you need to stop. Like, please stop. We don't need to hold hands. You don't need to be all over me. You don't need to be rubbing me and all this and that. And she was saying that in previous relationships, she didn't have a person doing all this and saying all this as much as I do. And so it's uncomfortable.
No.
But like, I've transformed in my expression of that. And she is, I don't know where she is.
But see, I don't think that there's a right or wrong to it.
No,
I think
it's
we're
not.
just 2 different
Yeah, I'm
people
not saying
when it
that it's
comes
right
to
or
that.
wrong, but like adjusting.
But you want me to transform to where you're at now.
Not completely,
Okay.
but maybe a little bit.
I mean, I take it, don't I?
Yeah, you do.
Like,
You do.
I take it.
Yeah.
And then eventually I'm like, okay, stop.
Mm-hmm.
Once it's like overkill.
Yeah. So we're growing, y'all. Y'all are watching this growth.
Yeah.
We're even having some conversations here in our debrief. But so we'll continue to check in every 3 or so sessions on what we talked about, how the discussion is going, so that y'all can come along our journey with us. And maybe there's some things you can take from it. Main thing we want to say, though, is look for some resources and tools to help you have these deep discussions to discover your family of origin, everything
I encourage
else.
everyone to go to counseling. Even if
Absolutely.
you're not in a relationship,
Mhm.
just personal counseling. Like, I could see where it could be beneficial.
Yep.
Getting your own self together. And then
Mhm.
once you get in a relationship, or if you're in a relationship, then coming together
Mm-hmm.
and doing that together. So,
Yep.
anyways.
So make sure to go ahead and press that subscribe button. Hit the bell, too, so you can know exactly when we post our episode, even if it's a day late. Anyway, so make sure to subscribe, stay tuned, check out our other videos, and make sure to comment, like, and email. If there's some things that we need to touch on, or you hear some things that we're talking about that we're not really going into, let us know, because that's going to only help us and only help everybody else. So thanks so much for coming along this journey with us. This has been another episode of Coupled Up. See you next time.
Bye, guys.